Hi, I'm Bernie Flynn. At New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Company, we believe that all citizens need to be informed about the important issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, MagnaCare, Seton Hall University, where leaders learn, Investors Bank, NJM, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 college savings plan. Turn a dream into a degree. And by ShopRite Supermarkets. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. And by Commerce Magazine.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No. People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Welcome, One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato. This is one of those programs you're really going to appreciate. We have one of our great authors in the region, in the nation, frankly. We have our friend Larry McShane, who's the author of Chin, The Life and Crimes of Mafia Boss Vincent Gigante. Is also a journalist with the New York Daily News. Good to see you, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve.
I am disproportionately fascinated by organized crime, La Cosa Nostra. I've often said this on the show. The neighborhood I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, disproportionately populated by members of organized crime. We always knew about the Chin. For those who don't know, Vincent Gigante was?
He was the boss of the Genovese crime family, probably the most powerful mob boss in the country, from 1981 till 2003.
And named after Vito Genovese.
Yes, who was his mafia mentor. They became very close. The Chin rather famously tried to kill Frank Costello, who was the head of the family in the 50s, on orders from Vito Genovese and missed him.
So it's so interesting. When people hear Vincent Gigante, or the Chin, if you will, they immediately go to the trials of Gigante, the efforts of law enforcement to go after Gigante, but all the years of Gigante seeming to either be mentally ill,
right,
feign mental illness. What was the story as we begin to show some pictures of the Chin dressed in his robe or whatever garb as he walked the streets of Greenwich Village?
Yeah, his pretending to be mentally ill became his criminal defense, and it worked really like a charm from when he first started it in 1969, here in Jersey, as a matter of fact.
Well, hold on. He started doing what?
He was indicted for bribing the entire police force of Old Tappan.
Old Tappan in Bergen County.
Yes, right, exactly. And when it was time for him to appear for trial, his lawyer shows up in court in Hackensack and announces that his client is mentally unsound and has checked into a mental health facility in Westchester County, which he then did another 26 times over the ensuing decades as part of this continuing effort to prove that he was non compos mentis. He could not be tried.
Hold on. He actually went into mental health facilities, hospitals, but was also examined by psychologists, psychiatrists who said?
They said he was crazy. They said he was not able to. Now, these are, generally speaking, psychiatrists hired by the defense. When the prosecution would bring in psychiatrists, nobody had ever done this before. It was, virgin territory. They really had no idea what to do. The Bergen County Prosecutor's Office is ready to prosecute this guy in a bribery charge. All of a sudden, they're in a contest to prove, is he sane, is he not sane? That dragged on for 3 years.
And so all the years, how many years again did he go on with this act? It was an incredible act.
Well, 69, and he was convicted finally in 1997. So 28 years.
And died what year?
He died in 2005.
So, goes to jail ultimately what year?
Goes to jail in 97 after he's convicted for racketeering. The government then retries him again This time, not for the crimes he committed as the boss, but for feigning mental illness. So the second trial is all about how he obstructed justice at the first trial by pretending to be crazy. And that time, Ben Brafman was his lawyer, the famous criminal defense lawyer. He was old, Gigante was old, and he was sick. There was talk that the feds might bring in family members for abetting him in the scam, and he decided to cut a plea, and that was in 2003. And that was the end of his reign and kind of the end of the story. You know, he went to prison and passed away.
You know, so interesting, and a lot of pieces of this are interesting. His brother was a Roman Catholic priest.
Still is.
Still is.
Yeah.
First name?
Louis, Father Louis.
Father Louis Gigante.
Right.
In the South Bronx.
Right.
Runs a not-for-profit called?
Sebco.
Sebco, also a former member of the City Council in New York City.
Yes, ran for Congress unsuccessfully as well.
Is a real player.
Absolutely. Smart guy, sharp guy.
Loyal to his brother.
Loyal to his brother, also loyal to the people of the South Bronx. You know, he has critics, but his feeling was when he became a priest that priests who bounce from parish to parish don't develop enough of a connection with their parishioners.
Did ultimately the Chin and or his brother, Vincent Gigante or his brother Louis Gigante, acknowledge that this 30-year act of Vincent Gigante, who was the leader of one of the 5 families of organized crime, did they acknowledge, either one of them or both of them acknowledge that it was an act he was faking and that he in fact was not only not mentally ill, but he was also running this organized crime family from outside of prison, then inside prison?
The Chin had to admit it when he pleaded out the second time.
What did he say?
He was asked the questions, were you mentally well while this was happening? And, you know, he was very one word. It was all very scripted. It was a plea bargain. Everybody knew in advance. So that would be the one and only time that he ever said that. Louis Gigante, as far as I know, never acknowledged that his brother was the head of the family until I sat down for breakfast with him a year ago.
You sat down in Greenwich Village?
Yeah, he still lives down in the village now that he's retired from the priesthood, or retired from the parish work, I should say. And at some point in the conversation, he said, look, you know, was my brother the head of the Genovese family? Yes, he was. He was handpicked by Vito Genovese for the position, which that's one of those ones where you make sure the tape recorder is running.
He actually acknowledged that there not only was La Cosa Nostra, but my brother was one of the head of the 5 families.
Yes, exactly.
Did you ask him, was your brother faking when he acted insane?
We didn't get into that. It was a primary conversation. We were hoping to have more conversations. Ultimately, he decided that he didn't want to go any further with it.
So the Chin, the term the Chin. By the way, he was a ruthless killer.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
The Chin comes from where?
From his mother. He was Vincenzo. His mother used to call him Vincenzino, which was sort of Chin. The kids in the neighborhood would call him Chin. She'd yell out for him, you know.
And that's where it came from?
Yeah, Vincenzino.
What were his crimes?
Well, I mean,
we know of.
According to FBI documents, he was a hitman for Vito Genovese. You know, I think a lot of people think the mafia with all violent crime. He was certainly involved in that. He was involved in the murder of the guys who plotted to kill Angelo Bruno down in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia boss. But he was a smart guy and a businessman too. And actually, the crime that really got him locked up was installing windows in New York City housing projects. Federal government in the late 70s, in an effort to save money, decreed that brand new windows would be installed in every housing project in New York City. Genovese family and other organized crime families owned the companies that produced the windows. The Genovese family specifically controlled the union that installed the windows. And so they set up the windows operation. All the bids were rigged.
Clearly.
Right. Companies who were not linked up to the mob would pay a fee, $2 a window.
A VIG?
Yeah, basically a mob tax.
And so how did they get caught?
A guy named Peter Savino, who was kind of the mastermind of this whole thing, got caught up. This is a guy, I should say, he had never met Gigante. One of the things that made Gigante so difficult to prosecute was...
Did they never say his name?
Oh, no.
You couldn't say the Chin?
On penalty of death, it was this.
Just to be clear, you had to actually make a physical reference.
Yes. Point
You'd point to your
rub.
chin.
Yeah.
You could not say the word chin, because if you did, you would be killed.
Yes, he told people
because they were concerned about the government surveillance, audio taping,
Right.
and if they heard the word chin, whoever said it would be killed.
Right. And Gigante, to his credit, for an old school mobster, was very, very aware. A lot of guys were not. John Gotti is a perfect example of a guy who was caught talking on tape. Chin Gigante was never caught, while he was running the family in Greenwich Village talking on tape.
Which is amazing, because all those years. By the way, real quick, I digress, because you talked about him getting caught, what he got caught for. Talk about his relationship with Gotti. He did not like John Gotti.
The feeling was mutual. I was told by several law enforcement and a couple of mobsters that Gotti was really afraid of the Chin.
Afraid of the Chin?
Well, the Chin had several members of Gotti's inner circle killed. His driver, his underboss, Frank DeCicco, and one of the shooters in the Paul Castellano hit, the murder that raised Gotti from capo to head of the Gambino
1985?
family. Yes, exactly. December '85 outside Sparks Steakhouse. Eddie Lino, one of the shooters. And little Al Diarco, who was a mobster who flipped, said that Chin wanted to kill Gotti, but he kind of wanted to let Gotti know that the noose was tightening by killing these guys around
But
him.
stylistically, Gotti, flashy, played the media, loved the attention. Chin, the opposite.
Well, that kind of thing infuriated Gigante. To Gigante, the mafia was a secret society. It was not something to be trumpeted, with John Miller on NBC.
Reporter John Miller.
Yes, exactly. It was not, it was not to be seen at some restaurant on the Upper East Side at 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning, the Chin was asleep,
Yeah, but the other part of this, in the time we have left, Larry, Vincent Gigante, Chin Gigante had two families.
Yes, yeah.
He had two complete families, which was very atypical for an organized crime figure, for someone who's, quote, old school, Italian. How the heck did he pull that off?
Well, I think it's an indication of the kind of power and respect he commanded within the underworld, that it was just allowed to go on,
Meaning he had two women with two families.
Well, they were both named Olympia.
Right.
One lived in Bergen County.
And one lived in New Jersey, one lived in...
One lived on the Upper East Side. And he had children with both, and, he maintained a relationship with both. But very strange. At the end, the two families had to decide how to divvy up his ashes. It got a little testy at the end there, but...
The obsession with Vincent Gigante, Chin Gigante, about Greenwich Village. His family comes from Naples.
Right.
They settle, like many, our family came from Naples, settled in a small section of Newark.
Right.
Many others settled in Brooklyn, some settled in Jersey City, but many settled at Greenwich Village. His family, his life, really revolved around just a few blocks in Greenwich Village, correct?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I spoke to Henry Hill before Henry died.
Henry Hill of the Henry Hill...
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, right.
And Henry said to him that was the craziest thing about Gigante, that he made all this money and he had all this power, and he basically lived in like a 4-square-block area and never went anyplace else.
Why?
I don't think he cared about the trappings of wealth, and I think he just liked the idea of being the boss.
To what end?
Well, he was very well loved by the guys who were close to him. He was a benevolent guy who used to give money out to the family. Usually the process is kick the money up. And I think he sort of felt like he was groomed for the position. He was involved with organized crime for a very young age. And, once he got there, he really proved to be quite adept at it. I mean, I don't think there was much argument that he was the most powerful mob boss in the country.
A few seconds left. What's your interest/obsession with organized crime? You've been doing this a while.
Well, when I was a kid, my father used to bring the Daily News home, and you'd see, all these stories and the pictures and everything splashed. On a personal level, I was working the night when Paul Castellano got hit, and I was sent to the scene. So I was outside Sparks Steakhouse.
You were right there.
Which was just an astounding thing to see. And that, ever since then, 1985.
Paul Castellano right in the curb.
Yeah, and Tommy Bilotti is driving right next to him.
Right there in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
So, today, organized crime exists? Well, exists in other families, non-La Cosa Nostra, non-Italian, but traditional mafia exist in
think
any
there's-
meaningful way?
There's somewhat of a remnant of it, you know what I mean? But sort of like we touched on before, there was a time when organized crime controlled all the concrete pouring in New York, or the installation of all the windows in New York, and ran unions, and the labor belonged to them. And I don't think that really exists anymore. There's, the other thing is, there was a time when you wanted to be the boss like Gigante did. At a certain point in the 90s, becoming the boss just meant an indictment. Nobody wanted to do it. So times have
Next
changed.
book, what is it?
It's a book, another mob book, about Ralph Natale, who was the head of the Philadelphia family from 1994 to 1998.
Because?
It's an interesting story. He was involved with Angelo Bruno. He's another old school guy. He went to prison. He was brought before a congressional committee where he could have ratted everybody out and walked. He refused to do it. Angelo Bruno is killed, and then he plots for 15 years about his comeback and how he's going to regain control of Philadelphia.
Is Nicky Scarfo in this one?
Very much so.
Very much so. I knew there was no way
Yeah.
that little, I can only say that now,
Yeah.
little Nicky Scarfo had
Yeah.
to be in that story. Listen, the book is called Chin, The Life and Crimes of Mafia Boss Vincent Chin Gigante. The author is Larry McShane, who has roots in New York, but is a Seton Hall grad, a Seton Hall guy, and we love that as well.
Yeah.
Larry, thanks. Great book, great read. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you, Larry.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to welcome here at Public Broadcasting Rosemarie Ternezio, the author of a book called Fairytale Interrupted, a memoir of life, love, and loss, and also the founder of and CEO of RMT, PR Management. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Fairytale Interrupted, New York Times bestseller. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn. Mm-hmm. Your connection, for those who do not know, to John F. Kennedy Jr. was?
I was his executive assistant and then chief of staff for 5 years.
Over at George.
Over at George Magazine.
Describe George for those who didn't
George
know.
was amazing. It was the startup we were all under the age of 30 working there and trying to change the way young people viewed politics and trying to make politics accessible to people who wouldn't normally love it.
Yeah.
And we came to love it through John's passion for it. And the magazine really embodied John. It was celebrity and politics kind of merged into one. So he understood that, that connection, and he understood why it was exciting to people. So he decided to make it broader and had a mission.
John died on July 16th, 1999.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of John's death on your life.
Oh, that was quick. It was absolutely devastating.
Too quick, by the way? I shouldn't have asked you that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I was expecting it, but it was absolutely devastating. And I think that in terms of not just from a career perspective, obviously, but from a personal perspective.
How personal was it?
Very personal. I was very close to John and to Carolyn, and
Is that a nick? Looks like a nickname
that's
to
a
me.
Nick's game.
How do you know a
That's
nickname right
Nick's
away?
game.
Right?
I know,
He
'cause
got good seats.
Well, yes,
He
he
got
did.
good
We
seats.
were sitting, our feet were on the floor. And at one point, Patrick Ewing at the time waved to him. And I was like, don't tell me that was for you. And he's like, oh, shut up. I just couldn't, I was just like, this is ridiculous.
You're tight.
Yeah,
And it
we
was
were
personal.
tight. Yeah, we were. I mean, I think John didn't have a lot of people in his life that had his back, and I did. And I didn't have an agenda. It was just my job. And we had a very, we were comrades, we were buddies.
Did it start out that way?
No,
it didn't. I read the book cover to cover.
Not at all.
I'm sitting there going, no. No, you're born and raised.
In the Bronx, yeah. So
Different background from John F. Kennedy Jr.
I mean, couldn't be more different. Could not be more different. Yeah.
And your dad was a Democrat?
My dad was a staunch Taft Republican.
Taft! Oh my God! Oh. So he said, "Wow, you're working for the Kennedys. That's great."
No, he was like, "Why do you want to work for them?" So, my dad was not initially impressed, but he was very proud of it and thought, of course, behind my back was telling everybody that she works for JFK Jr. Yeah, it was a big deal, but I didn't realize it at the time because you're kind of in it and you're young and you're just sort of, and after 6 months, it's a job.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm reading the book. You're getting all kinds of calls from all kinds of people. You're dealing with all kinds of problems.
But at the same time, it's still like a job, and you have to perform. You have to do your job. So I think the balance of that. But there was always, moments when I was on the train on the way to work, or walking down the street, or, and thinking, wow, I mean, it wasn't lost on me, but it didn't stop me from being able to do my job. I work for JFK Jr. Like, if every single person on this train knows who that is.
Since no one watching right now, and you also had a very, close relationship with Carolyn as well.
Yes.
Biggest misconception about John F. Kennedy Jr. was?
He wasn't smart.
Talk about it.
He was very smart, brilliant, actually, wise, emotionally intelligent, could read people in a minute, and had to be in a way because of who he was. I mean, he had to be able to sort of size people up, but he was a brilliant editor. He knew what worked and what didn't. He knew what people wanted to read and what they didn't. And he was able to, which takes somebody very intelligent, he was able to humble himself in a way that made other people comfortable around him. So, what do you mean? If you were in a room with John for more than 5 minutes, you're like, oh wow, he's normal. He's just a regular, he's just a nice guy.
And the whole thing about his looks, which people made such a big deal about.
He had such a.
How did he see himself?
I think he knew. He knew he was.
Of course he knew.
Good looking, but I don't think he thought he was the best looking guy in the world. I think he kind of took it all with a grain of salt, and it just kind of was part of who he was. But I don't think he was. That's not really what he was focused on. No, he had this. I remember him saying to a friend of his once, it's really easy for me to be a great man. I'm set up for it. Everybody loves me. Everybody loved my family, my dad. Yeah. But I'm more concerned about being a good man. And I think he really was. And I think he understood that having that kind of a platform, you really have to do good things.
Help people.
Yeah.
He wanted to help people.
Oh, all the time, yeah.
And by the way, in the book, it was also struck, we'll talk about Carolyn in a second, I was struck by how he got hit up all the time for favors constantly. And your job was to manage a lot of that.
Yeah, and also to understand, to get to know him in a way that you knew who to, present, or what to present and what not to present. And a lot of things, that would, if there were a lot of celebrities involved in something, he tended to shy away from it. He liked to do things, he liked to bring attention to things that were not going to get there on their own and that he thought were good causes.
Caroline, only because you had a close relationship with her, and the public perception of her on the part of some speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't see that. Your experience was different. You encouraged her to go on
I did.
That
I did.
flight to that wedding.
Yes.
Talk about it.
I felt that it would be a spectacle for him and for her if she didn't show up. It was a big family wedding. Everyone was going to be there. And there was that perception of her, and I didn't want her to feed into it by not showing up. Do I wish I hadn't told her to go? Obviously. But I don't think it wouldn't have happened if she didn't go. It's just something that'll always be, here.
You wrote this book. Mm-hmm. Why?
Because
And you waited.
Yeah, because, well, two things. Mostly because my mom had passed away, and she was so proud of all of this, and that, her daughter, my mom didn't go to college, my dad didn't go to college, they worked 2 jobs. There's my mom. They worked 2 jobs. They worked really hard. They put us through school, and I really felt like it was a tribute to my mom because it was something that she was so proud of. Yeah.
Would she tell everybody that?
Oh, everyone who would listen.
What'd she say?
You know, my daughter works, you know who my daughter works for? And she would whisper it, JFK Jr.
How Italian is that?
It's so Italian.
I knew it right away.
It's so
she would lower her voice.
Oh, yeah. JFK Jr. I'm like, Mom, no one's going to hear you. You have to say it. If you're going to say it, say it.
Oh, boy. First of all, I wish I had more time with you.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everybody to go out and get this book.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a tough question on the way out. I ask interesting people like yourself the most significant lesson they've learned about leadership, because I wrote this book called Lessons in Leadership. What's the #1 lesson you've learned about leadership in your career, which may also be the #1 lesson you learned about life?
If you put people in, and I learned this from John, if you put people in over their heads, 99% of the time they will rise to the occasion and not fail.
Why?
Because most people want to achieve something and feel like they're doing something more than just what they're capable of.
Put them over their heads.
Yeah.
One more. This picture.
Incredible.
Move in on that, guys. Why?
You know, I didn't want it. I didn't want him on the cover. I didn't want his name on the cover. I didn't want to be exploitive in any way.
You're not.
And my publisher met me at the elevator, called an emergency meeting at Simon & Schuster, met me at the elevator with a glass of wine and said, I want to show you a cover, have this, and then come in.
They just wanted to be regular people.
They just wanted it to be,
Walk the dog here in Manhattan.
Yeah. And what was going on in front of them were about 20 paparazzi walking backwards and shooting, and they were just going to get breakfast.
Rosemarie, thank you for joining us here on Public Television.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We're proud of you.
Thank you.
It's a good book. Go out and get it.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, MagnaCare, Seton Hall University, Investors Bank, NJM, NJ Best, and by ShopRite Supermarkets. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
NJM Insurance Company has been serving New Jersey policyholders for more than 100 years. But just who are NJM's policyholders? They're the men and women who teach our children, the public sector employees who maintain our infrastructure, the workers who craft our manufactured goods, and New Jersey's next generation of leaders. The people who make our state a great place to call home. NJM, we've got New Jersey covered.